got into flagging. My dad was a starter at the old Nazareth half mile and Dorney Park Speedway. When I was old enough at 16, he brought me up on the flag stand and got me started. I grew up at the track. I was a little kid in a stroller. Every weekend we were at the Speedway. So it's kind of in our blood, the same as my son Kevin, who's my assistant here. He grew up in a stroller at the Speedway. My dad was a starter at the old Nazareth half mile and Dorney Park Speedway. He learned there and also on the Nazareth mile, because there was 2 tracks at Nazareth, so he did some work at both. But the half mile track was his thing. He was a fixture there. And same thing with Dorney Park. As a matter of fact, Dorney Park, where the original track stands, or used to stand I should say, there's a plaque where the original start-finish line is, and he's on their plaque. And that's just to mark that, because that track was there for years. But when they first built that, it was a midget track and it was made out of wood. And it evolved. It was a Saturday night thing and it was always standing room in there. It was quite the place to go as a kid. My mother and my stepmother handmade these. These are my dad's flags. Every year he would get another set. And I can remember growing up as a kid watching them sit there and get mad at ironing and trying to get these squares to all match up. But he was very particular in his flags. He didn't buy them. They were all handmade. And this was his very last set that my stepmother made that he had. And when he retired, he passed them on and gave them to me. And I only used them one time here, and that was for the inaugural Doug Hoffman race. And ever since that, they've been put away. And this cross, somebody gave him, and he had that on his racing bag for his flags. And it's been there for years and years and years. So I carry it in my backpack to keep it protected so it doesn't get lost. Because I couldn't even tell you how old that is. So, but he always carried it with him, and I always carried it with me. Dorney Park was the first track to close because they wanted to build a roller coaster there. So we raced the Dorney Park cars at Nazareth. My dad had moved to Florida, so I took over the chief starter position at Dorney Park. And Nazareth was up in the air as far as their schedule was kind of all over. So I did a few shows for Charlie Bray. And he was a promoter at Nazareth. He did some different things. So I did some shows for him, and I went to Volusia County down to Florida where my dad was living. And I worked with him at Volusia County Speedway during Speed Weeks, and Ward Crozier was there, and he was like, "Oh, I forgot your kid flagged. I need a starter at Mahoning. Would he be interested?" So in 1989 I went there, and I stayed there until 2000. I worked alone most of the time. Sometimes I would have help, but most of the time I was alone. It was hectic. Things happened fast on a little quarter-mile track, but it was a lot of fun. And then coming here, this place, from what I was used to from Mahoning coming to here was such a total difference. I went from asphalt to dirt, and from a quarter-mile paved asphalt track to a 5/8 mile dirt track was quite a jump. And I loved it, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. If I got a nomination for Hall of Fame, that would be awesome. It's always drivers that are in the Hall of Fame because they're the big name recognition, and to have an official starter, an official go into an Hall of Fame would be is a compliment, especially to have 2 of us in there would be even great. There's some great starters out there. Tex Enright was fantastic. He's a legend, and Warren has been around a long time, and he's a great starter too. And there's just so many different guys that do it. You know, I couldn't even name them all because I'm always at the track, so I don't get to go to too many other speedways other than this one. But Terry in New Egypt, I taught him. He was actually one of my assistants at Mahoning back in the 90s. So, you know, so I was able to teach him. So he learned. I'm sure Warren taught him some things, but you know, my goal now is to get Kevin up to speed. But to go into the Hall of Fame would be fantastic. That would make this complete. Record turn 3 there. That's it.
Well, so the rookies will head in to the pit area. Track we're going to come out and do a little bit of work here before we get things going.